It was a little bit too loud for a Saturday morning. Hello, guys. 8. Welcome to the first MIT Club of Northern California's Technology Conference 2017. I'm Shuja Keen. I'm the chair of the technology track. Thank you. Thank you. It's great to see so many of you here on a Saturday morning. Thank you for taking out the time, curing your hangovers, what have you, and spending the day with us. It's always so encouraging. We have an incredible day in store for you, and we can't wait to get started. But I just want to give some context before we started off here. I took over the technology track in late August last year when Bridget became the president. Bridget is our club president over here. And the idea was, luckily for me, it was a clean slate. It was the track had been dormant for a while, but that allowed me a lot of latitude to work with. But we spent the first 4 or 5 months trying to figure out what the population wanted. So we did probably about 8 events over the course of the last 6 months around AI, VR, AR, digital health, and so on and so forth. And they were mostly like unconference style formats to get audience engaged. And then that's where the idea for the conference emerged, right? So we've got 15,000 alums in the Bay Area. Probably more than half of them work in tech in some way, shape, or form, whether as entrepreneurs, as investors, as engineers, as data scientists. And we're like, what if we put this community of extremely well-connected, extremely accomplished individuals together to try and make the world a better place by using AI, right? I mean, that's what the thesis was. That's what we started off. And we started that's where the idea for the conference emerged. And took a lot of effort to put this together over the last 4 months. But somebody once told me, if you wanted to get something done, find a really busy person. So I went out and found 10 really busy people. And we put this together. So I don't know if the volunteers are here right now. I'd love to have them on stage. Okay, so slight change of plans because of the rush over there. We weren't expecting so many people to show up. Quite frankly, when we started off, our goals were very modest. We thought that we'd be able to get like 350 people in. As of last night, we had a little over 650 people register for the day. So we will, this is awesome event. But this would not have been possible without the incredible volunteers we have, and we'll take this opportunity and we'll bring them on stage later on during the day. I also want to thank our sponsors, and one individual in particular, Mark Gorenberg. Mark was our seed investor. I went to him with the idea like 2 months ago. Within 20 minutes, he's like, I'm going to underwrite this. You just brought 2 of my worlds come together and collide together, right? MIT and AI, I have to support you. It was a complete blind support, and I hope we live to deliver on what Mark has sort of tasked us with, not just for the conference, but for the event series for the whole year. And we'll talk about that later on during the day. In addition to Mark, I think we've got a bunch of other sponsors and supporters who've come in a really big way, including Amazon Web Services, Affinity, TRG, Lightspeed Venture Partners who've come in and supported us. And Lightspeed is the second year they're supporting the club. NEA, we've also got Wells Fargo and Morgan Stanley. And then our silver sponsors, we've got General Catalyst, who's a repeat supporter. This is the 3rd time in a row they've supported us. There's Accenture, there's Mentors Fund, and so on and so forth. So thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause for all the people, our sponsors and volunteers. Just a few logistical points. Number 1, we've got a Twitter handle, #MITAI. Please go around tweeting it. We also are live streaming both on YouTube as well as Facebook. So if you have friends who are not able to participate and join during the day, they can join us virtually. We also have a special Snapchat filter. So for those of you, I don't know, I'm not in that age, but those of you who are active on Snapchat, feel free to sort of, put it up on, I don't know, what you call it, snap it or whatever. And what else? Wi-Fi passwords are over there. Restrooms are behind. Some of you guys have had issues with your mobile app. Please, there will be Dave Huang outside. He can help you reset your passwords. Or those of you who logged in very late and did not get a login, he can create a username and password for you. And then the last thing is we have a Slack community as well. So when you go through the mobile app, you can go join the Slack channel and start interacting, right? So the idea was that we start this conversation today, but we're going to extend this throughout the year. We are activating this community of MIT people who are participating in tech and AI and machine learning, and really get them together to help each other out, whether it's to help each other out finding jobs, whether it's to helping them fund their companies, whether to find their next customer and so on and so forth. But so we're trying to use multiple channels and to help facilitate that. I don't think I need to say anything more. You're not here to hear me. You've got like 60 amazing speakers, and we'll get the program started. Our first speaker for the day is a really dear friend of mine. We go back 20 odd years from what we used to do on the back streets of Fenway to here, so I don't want to go into that. But Hemant Taneja is an early investor. He's a partner and managing director at General Catalyst. He's been an early investor in sort of some of the most successful startups. His most recent IPO was Snapchat. He was an early investor there. And he's going to help cut through the noise around AI and frame what the AI future is going to look like and what's emerging and how is that going to impact society. My wife, unfortunately, could not come here because she's a radiologist and she feels that her job might get eliminated by machine learning image recognition algorithms. And if you've got an MIT grad who's fearing about some of those things and how to reinvent and pivot themselves, I think there's a much broader implication in society when suddenly truck drivers are no longer relevant, whether you've got, and at the same time people are living longer and longer. So when those two issues collide, we'll have like really interesting times. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce Hemant Taneja, Managing Director of General Catalyst, on stage.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me okay? My voice is dying, so bear with me. Thanks, Shuja. And congrats. This is actually a lot bigger than I thought you'd be pulling off, so congratulations on putting a great day together. So I'm really excited to be here to talk about AI. In fact, we've been thinking hard about it for the last couple of years. Some of you, where's Professor Ganguly here? Some of you have actually been teaching me how to, there you are, how to think about it, what's really happening, what the potential is. And so I'm excited to present at least the way I have started to think about it, and my email's right there. If you have any thoughts, please do email me. I'm sure it's a top of mind topic for a lot of you. Okay. So a little bit about my own work. These are examples of some of the companies I work with. And if you see these companies, and Khan Academy, which is actually a nonprofit that all of you I'm sure know, they're in a variety of different sectors. I've worked on healthcare, education, finance, media, among others. And the thing that I want to point out that's interesting is, 15 years ago when I got into business, if I put up a slide like this, it would be companies in the exact same sectors, but they would be software companies. How do we build software that makes physicians more efficient? Or how do we build software that makes, payments more efficient? Or that makes teachers more efficient? And, fast forward 15 years through a lot of what the new innovations that have happened in social, mobile, and cloud, folks like you all over Silicon Valley and beyond are essentially reimagining the entire industries. So these companies are actually rethinking what healthcare looks like. So Livongo, for example, is a company that's got a mission to support 30 million diabetes patients or consumers with chronic diseases like diabetes, help them manage their diseases. okay? That's a lot of responsibility. Khan Academy has got a mission to make sure everybody learns, K through 12 education on top of that platform. That's going to determine what the next generation of kids are going to learn if they're actually successful. And on and on and on. I think this is kind of the pattern. Like, the entrepreneurs today are literally rethinking industries. So when I sit in these, the boardrooms that I'm in, a lot of companies like this, I do feel, and our founders feel, a great sense of responsibility. That's not just writing software for efficiency. That's sort of thinking about our future. AI is being embedded in all these companies, and it's a core capability that a lot of them use to be successful at what they're doing, and they have to think about what's the kind of future they're creating. And so that's, to me, a bit of the backdrop that I want to talk through as we go further down the slides. Okay, so a lot of smart people compare AI to electricity, and I think there's good reason for that. It's you look at Google, you look at Microsoft, they're starting to define themselves as AI-first companies for good reason. They have lots of great data. They're starting to apply a bunch of the tricks. Frankly, some of us studied 20 years ago at MIT around artificial intelligence, which are much more sort of usable today because we have the data. I don't think I meet a single company today that doesn't describe itself as an AI company. It's a great fundraising buzzword, right? In fact, one of my favorite questions when somebody describes themselves as that, and they've been around for 3 or 4 years or longer, is, when did you start using the word AI? And it's all in the last 18 months. So clearly this is a top-of-mind way to position yourself as well. You guys will learn about the applications of AI across, throughout the entire day. There's a lot of people a lot smarter than me that know how to apply it in different areas, and you'll get your mind bent in different directions. My job is to help you pause and pop up for a few minutes, okay? If this technology is as profound as we think it is, we should think long-term as to what's the kind of world we're trying to create. And, as Andrew Ng says, AI is electricity. I think sort of using that analogy, just imagine if you were over a century ago, you were in a room like this, 120 years ago, 130 years ago, whenever this happened, and the internal combustion engine was invented. As somebody told you, every one of these that you put on the planet is going to end up actually destroying the climate. What would you do differently? I'm not trying to say AI is a dangerous technology. I'm just saying it's a profound technology. The internal combustion engine has also changed our life. A lot happens because of it. And so that's really the goal. So as you're listening to everything today, just keep that in the back of your mind. Okay, so a lot of smart people are worried about it. Elon, sort of every couple of months there's an article where he's freaked out about it. AI is an existential threat, right? Obviously, we'll listen to a lot of what the benefits are that others are thinking about. And then there's some flippant folks, including one of my own partners, that essentially says, well, if the robots come after us, we'll just unplug them. So this is sort of a complete spectrum of conversation. On one hand, people think it's going to destroy us. On the other hand, people say, well, we control this technology, and who cares? Point for us, let's just think about what it all means. Where is this all going to go so we can have responsible innovation, which is kind of the core topic we're here for the next few minutes. So let me frame the two issues I think a lot about. One is algorithmic accountability. So more and more of our time gets spent online. Our society is kind of reorganizing online. Facebook did that, Twitter did that for us, Snap is doing that for us, Amazon does that for us. So a lot of what we do is not offline anymore. In the offline world, we have spent centuries trying to create rules and regulations that help you deal with bias and discrimination, right? Online, a lot of the decisions that humans make that we can watch for offline are made by software. So algorithmic accountability and transparency is a huge issue. What's really going on in the Google algorithms, or when Facebook decides to show us what they show us in the feed, and when Amazon decides to show you, here's the product you should buy, or when Waze tells you where to go. Rhonda was saying there's a lot of you that took this wrong detour this morning because Waze was telling you to the other entrance of the hotel. like what's really going on as these algorithms sort of decide on these things. That transparency is really important. The second thing that's really important is as we reconstruct these various industries, whether it's healthcare, finance, education, going back to the things we talked about, I think we're changing the nature of work, right? Jobs is top of mind for us, and work gives us purpose. And so are we going to use AI to make Shuja's wife a better radiologist, or are we going to just make her lose her job, right? I mean, those are top of mind questions that every entrepreneur in every sector needs to be thinking about. Okay, so at the end of the day, algorithms are just math, right? I mean, I can sort of say that here. This is the MIT audience. You've got a bunch of data, you've got a bunch of patterns, and you set an objective function and you figure out what the optimal answers are against the objective function. So those choices that we make are going to determine what these algorithms do for us. And I think in that sense, sort of being proactive and thinking through these things ahead of time is part of sort of a core design principle we need to have as innovators in this area. So let's talk about one area where we have seen AI have a big impact: fake news. 60+% of the people get news in their social media streams now, Facebook, Twitter. The whole fake news thing started because these content houses, these profit seekers kind of figured out if we create controversial fake news, a lot of people click on it, it's viral, and they make more money. So, they weren't thinking about the unintended consequences necessarily. Some of them, in fact, have come out and said they regret it. That could swing the election. External governments, on the other hand, recognize that and sort of use that as a weapon against us as well. I mean, all the chat about Russia, for example. So this is an example where, AI has kind of put negative propaganda on steroids and done something that potentially is harmful to us. It's an early example. It has also shown that the bias and discrimination in our offline society is actually also exists in our online society, right? So all the more need for transparency and algorithmic accountability. That's really sort of the key thing I want to highlight here. Here's an example of when Amazon launched its Prime, when it launched its Prime same-day delivery service in Boston. This is the map of where they launched it. There's a town of Roxbury in the Boston area that did not get the same-day delivery service. And when you look at the demographics of that town, it's actually mostly African-American people. I am not saying Amazon has folks that are biased or they discriminate. That's not my point. So when I looked at this, I was like, okay, well, they probably have really sophisticated algorithms that are focused on profit maximization. So they recognize that the folks in that zip code are not going to have purchasing power, and so they're not offering it. And that's probably why this happened, okay? The reality is, none of us know. It's just not understood. It's a black box, right? So here's the same service launched in Chicago. Okay? And south side of Chicago also did not, parts of south side did not get the service. When Amazon was asked, this is the map that Bloomberg had published, when Amazon was asked, they said, well, the warehouse is 2 hours away, and we just can't make deliveries in time sort of that far ahead. But turns out there were affluent white neighborhoods further out where the deliveries were made. So now I go back and think about what was the algorithmic decision that led to this. And again, I am not trying to prosecute Amazon's intentions. I know lots of people that work there. They're great folks. But how do we know? So here's an example of a company that is an emerging startup. I don't know them. I've just been reading about them. And I think it's the kind of design principles that I value and I look for in entrepreneurs. So Civicascape is a predictive policing startup. It was started by some folks that worked in the police departments. And they a priori recognized the bias that even though drug abuse is 50-50 in African American populations and Caucasian populations, the incidence rate of how many times folks are stopped is very skewed in one direction. And so they actually manually accounted for that bias in how they developed algorithms. They published those algorithms on GitHub and said, here's kind of our methodology. You can sort of comment on it. And they were completely transparent about it. That level of transparency in things that actually touch people's lives is really important as we sort of use these AI-based capabilities to power much of the economy. Okay, which brings me back to my second issue, work and purpose. So I think a lot about what is the kind of world we're trying to build with all these companies. And last year, the two most interesting ideas to me were, one was around self-driving trucks, and the other was around longevity. Okay, so when you look at self-driving trucks, the thesis is mostly these long-haul trucks are driving on highways, so it's relatively simple driving, a great early use case for autonomy that we're training for transportation. And drivers have to stop, they drive inefficiently, and fuel is a big part of the cost. Gosh, if you could just automate all that, you could actually create a lot of efficiency in this, okay? And so I can clearly see a $10, $20 billion company built if they could actually figure out how to solve this problem and gain distribution everywhere. Another example I saw was around longevity. And who here doesn't want to live longer, right? So there's this thesis that there's all these studies that have been done that help you understand how to reverse aging. And folks are trying to use machine learning to accelerate experimentation in that area and figure out what are the approaches that can help us live 30, 40, 50 years longer. I've looked at these companies. I have considered investing in some of these companies. I may actually invest in some of these companies. I think they're great ideas, okay? And they're actually being built right here within a few miles of each other, somewhere in 101. When you put those two things together, what do we create? There's 3.5 million truck drivers in the US, okay? We're going to tell them we got good news for you and bad news. Good news is you're going to live 30 years longer. Bad news is you have nothing to do. Growing up on our kitchen tables, we're all asked, what are you going to be, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? Work gives you purpose. Work gives you happiness. And so on one hand, we can make our businesses be more successful if we destroy work. On the other hand, we're actually fundamentally as a society saying we're not going to be happy. So, and by the way, any one of those companies isn't on its own creating that, but together we are. And a lot of those companies are being built here. So if you think about the Silicon Valley Collective, together we are shaping this world that we need to think deeply about as to what are the core values, what are the design principles that we're going after. Somebody I really respect said to me over dinner once that someday in 30 years we may have to pay to work. If work actually gives you happiness, it's actually a luxury. And if there's no work, then you may have to pay to work. Bill Gates is going around saying, well, we should tax robots, right? So I have friends that are working on universal basic income saying, well, when there's no work, what are we, what are we going to do? How do we sort of make sure folks can actually afford to live? And should we just put them on a stipend? So I think people recognize these are the directions we can be going and sort of solving for that eventuality. But the decisions today are going to shape what we actually create. And we don't have to go there. I mean, that doesn't have to necessarily be the way we innovate for the next 30 years. So I'm going to leave you with 3 thoughts, okay? 1, understand that collectively our work matters, not just individually. So just think about all the things that are being built and gaining success. Like, what role are you playing in the creation of society overall? And be part of that discussion. I don't think we're building just efficiency software anymore, to my earlier point. It matters. Like, it really matters how our kids are going to learn, how we're going to be healthy, and what kind of work we're going to do. It's all going to be based on decisions. It's all powered by, AI eventually. I think the second is, as a design principle, I always look for, how do we get more out of humans as opposed to replace them? So, when you, going back to Shuja's wife, since you're the man of the hour today, how about we build a radiology service that helps with triage and be more preemptive about understanding what's happening with our patients, as opposed to saying, let's just eliminate the radiologist, right? And then the last thing is, as we build these algorithms, we should be transparent. I think this is a question that you guys should be asking folks that are speaking later today. What is their core philosophy around that? Because if we don't understand what's being done, we don't know how to sort of manage the consequences of it. So that transparency is really important. Anyways, that's all I had for you guys. Thank you.